In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we're going to have killer fast SSDs, gorgeous galaxies, very fishy AMD chip flaws, teeny weeny PCs, and giveaway specifics. Go. Hey, welcome back to Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. I'm Dave Altavilla. And it's actually just two geeks today. It's We Two Geeks. That's what we're going to call the show because it's just me and Marco, and that's all there is to it. We are sans Chris today. We're sans Paul, but you've got us to entertain you for the next hour or so with lots of stuff to talk about. Marco, how's it going over there?
Good. It was a mad scramble to get ready to broadcast on time, and it's freaking cold out here today. But other than that, things are good.
It's cold. I got a foot and a half of snow.
Oh, you got way more snow than we did. The snow's gone down here, but just that wind that gets into your bones today, I don't like it.
Bone chilling wind, eh?
Yes, exactly.
Welcome to the Northeast. There's not much you can do about it, but we are thick-skinned folks here, and we'll brave the elements nonetheless, and talk tech at you. By the way, since we're talking tech, we have some new tech we're trying out today, and I should have known better because clearly this shirt is playing havoc with the camera. It is not very good for cameras in general. I think this shirt. You see how I'm like swimming here, but oh well. What are you gonna do? We're giving the Logitech C922 a trial today, and giving it probably one of the toughest jobs it could handle, which is a crazy shirt to deal with. There it is, the Logitech C922 Pro Stream webcam, and Marco and I are both broadcasting over these puppies today. These are great cameras, 1080p Full HD webcams that are built and optimized for gaming and streaming, or game streaming and streamers in general. So we figured we'd take these for a little spin here today and see how they do. Marco, you're looking pretty suave behind your new Logitech C922.
I didn't think it was possible for me to look any better, but Logitech seems to have done something special with this camera. Look at this guy. It's amazing.
Look at this. He's an Adonis. Oh, baby. That is rich.
Exactly.
That is rich. No, hey, anything we can do to up our game, that's what we're trying to do. And so we're giving these a whirl. As you might notice, my background, which I typically keep very dark, these cameras are actually doing some pretty impressive stuff with background lighting, as you can see. Really filling up the background light, even though my office here is pretty dark. So you get a good look at my guitars. Go this way, and yeah, they're all lit up back there. Ooh, focus! Look at that. Not bad at all. We'll have to see how these work. We're going to be streaming with these in the cast in the days ahead, and that's the Logitech C922 Pro Stream webcam. Thanks, Logitech. They are. I guess you could say official sponsors of this episode of 2.5 Geeks. So good stuff. Hey, well, let's move along. Let's move along to the headlines and the reviews and all the happenings in tech. And there's a lot going on. We missed you last week. We had some busy travel times going on, and so we had to skip the week, but we're back. And yeah, we've got some really good stuff to talk about today. Lots of impressive new technology has been launched since we last spoke. So, Marco, you tried your hand with a couple of new SSDs from Intel, the Optane SSD 800P and the Intel SSD DCP 4510. Decidedly different drives for different applications, right?
Completely different drives. The only similarity is that they're both solid-state drives. But let's start with the Optane 800P drives. So let me grab it, see if I could show this off to you fine folks. This is an M.2 gum stick of an Intel SSD Optane 800P. So what makes these drives special is that they don't have 3D flash memory on here, or NAND flash memory, I should say. These are the drives that are based on 3D crosspoint memory technology. Now, this is a 100% Intel built drive, Intel controller, Intel 3D Crosspoint, well, Intel and Micron 3D Crosspoint memory. And now the capacities are small on the two drives that just launched in the 800p series. You have a 118 gig and a 58 gig drive. And if you look at the specs and you're used to these insane NVMe SSDs throwing 3 gigs a second, you're going to look at these and go, hey, why is this only PCI Express X2? And why are, max sequential transfers under 2 gigabytes? Well, I'm going to tell you, it's because these are optimized for the actual workloads that desktop PCs and notebooks put on the storage subsystem. So they're just bleeding edge tech and super fast with 4K transfers at low Q depths. Lots of SSDs, they quote their transfer speeds at high Q depths, and that really doesn't happen often with typical desktop or mobile workloads. So if you come by the site, check out the review, what you're going to see is that the Optane 800p drives, despite having much smaller capacities than the NAND-based SSDs I compared them to, is you're going to see sequential transfers in the 1.5 gigasecond reads and about 650, 700 megabytes for writes. But that's sequential transfers. If you look at low Q depth 4K transfers, I'm just going to throw the Samsung SSD 960 Pro out. That drive does about 239 megs a second for writes and only about 50 megs a second for 4K reads. Whereas one of these Optane drives, you're looking at about 223 megs per second writes, but a whopping 300 plus megabytes a second for reads. We're talking many times the performance for those 4K transfers and then in addition to those high 4K transfers, ultra low latency, some of the lowest latencies of any M.2 SSD. So you combine that awesome 4K performance with low latency, and you get a really awesome, snappy experience with the kind of workloads you're likely to experience every day on your PC.
So the SSD 800p, obviously what you're talking about here is a very different sort of performance characteristic than the average NVMe solid state drive. Is it really that tangible? I mean, you're talking about much faster access times, much faster or much more small file throughput bandwidth in the 4K transfer test that you talked about. What does that equate to in terms of real world feel? Do you get like lightning fast boot up, application load, just general responsiveness under any sort of taxing workload? How does that all translate into, I guess, end user feel?
So it's sort of all of the above. You do get ultra fast boot times, the fastest load times. We actually have that quantified in the PC Mark Storage 2 benchmarks. It actually shows load times and workload times for a bunch of actual applications from Photoshop to World of Warcraft and Excel. And they are the fastest for everything that you mentioned. One other thing that the Intel's Optane drives excel at is maintaining quality of service while under load. If you've ever had a bunch of torrents downloading, let's say, and even if they're not coming down at super fast speeds, while you're browsing and trying to do something else, even with a fast SSD, sometimes you sort of feel your PC bogged down, or something that's normally super snappy on the SSD isn't quite as snappy. The Optane drives basically behave the same no matter what's going on. So yes, you can load it down. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But those everyday kind of usage cases where you can feel a standard SSD slow down, it just doesn't happen on Optane. It's really all around a better experience. Now, the negatives are they're only available in very small capacities. 3D Crosspoint, even though we've been talking about it for a couple of years, is still a fledgling technology. And the largest capacity consumer M.2 SSD here of 800p is only 118 gigs. So it's sort of like the beginning of the SSD days where you'd have this small boot drive and you still need something else for bulk storage. But
gotcha.
It's really a quality experience. It's a worthwhile experience. If you're building a PC and an Optane is in your budget, I should mention the 118 gig drives, $200. The 58 gig drives, $119, or maybe 129 for the 58 gig drive. They're not cheap in terms of cost per gigabyte. You're talking $1.70 to $2.22 a gigabyte, which is many times that of even a high-end NVMe NAND-based drive. But if you want the best experience for everyday computing workloads, it's worth it to pair this with something else.
So even though it's got lower, slightly low, I mean, it's still pretty darn good sequential transfers, right? In the multi-gigabit range. So even though like versus a standard NVMe drive, which, you know, like you said, the Samsung 960, for example, might push 3 gigs a second for reads and a gig and a half, 1.7 gig for write, something like that, maybe 2 gigs. Anyways, it's going to feel more responsive, even in a situation where you're loading it down with a large sequential effort and you still want system responsiveness. So let's just say scenario rendering a video on my workstation, and I'm bopping around, you know, opening up other applications, doing email, surfing the web, what have you. I'm going to have a more responsive feel even under a heavy sequential workload, just because it can handle those shallow light duty requests as well at the same time.
Yeah, because even, you know, when you're chunking on that video, you're kind of swapping from a cache file to the main file. You're not doing the one big file all at once. So yes, when you're loading them down, the quality of service and consistency of performance is better than a NAND-based SSD.
Cool. So the best of both worlds right now, because you have that smaller capacity, the best of both worlds would be, let's take, you know, one of those drives, have it as your boot volume. Maybe it's the largest capacity you can get. What'd you say? 128 gig, 120 gig, something like that?
118 gig.
Yeah, 118 gig for your boot OS, and then stick a nice big fat NVMe SSD for additional storage, or some SATA SSDs for storage, right?
Yeah, or if you're really nuts, I have RAID performance too with a pair of them. You can get really good RAID performance. So to give you an example, with two 118 gig drives paired in a RAID 0 array, 2.8 gigs per second on sequential transfers and 1.2 on 2.8 gigs a second reads, just about 1.3 for writes. So if you got some cache laying around, you can RAID them because they're they have high endurance, they're super reliable, or at least they should be. Then you can really have the best of both worlds, but you're talking $400 for under 300 gigs of storage. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. You know, when density comes up and cost gets driven down a little bit on these things, a little bit more, you could see these as shoo-ins for notebooks, where you don't need quite the capacity of obviously a workstation or enthusiast desktop capacity, but you know, 256 gig, 512 gig Optane in a notebook. Talk about a killer setup, right?
Oh yeah, it would rock. They're low power, and what other thing you have to keep in mind, if the faster the storage drive can do its job and go back to sleep, the better your battery life. So you know, they're really going to be ideal for mobile applications. Gotcha.
Very cool, very cool. And then the other Intel SSD you looked at is more something targeted at the data center, right? The DCP 4510. That's a mouthful.
Yeah. So you guys really want to drool? So, I mean, this is only 10 terabytes worth of solid state storage right here. So I have an 8 terabyte drive and a 2 terabyte drive in the P4510 series. Just to really make you drool, I actually have 4 of the 2 terabyte drives, and I'm going to be doing some VROC testing soon. I just have to get the platform and cabling all sorted out, but I wanted to get the standalone review done, just so you guys can see these in action first. So these drives are sick. These are 3D TLC NAND-based enterprise class SSDs. These are not based on 3D XPoint like Optane. These are traditional SSDs in the sense that you all know them based on flash memory. Now, Intel's done some cool things with these. They're based on the same controller as the previous gen 4500 series drives, but those had 32-layer 3D NAND. These are 64-layer, the latest 3D NAND from Intel. Plus, they have some highly tuned firmware, and they're optimized for this latest generation of flash memory. And what Intel was able to do is really impressive. So in terms of latencies, they're just a shade behind an Optane drive. Still, like the best latencies we've seen from a NAND-based enterprise SSD, plus the 8 terabyte, the highest capacity one that has just a bunch of NAND chips inside. 3.2 gigabytes per second reads on sequential transfers and over 3 gigs a second writes. And now those aren't just rated specs. I actually tested the drive and got those numbers, and even better than the rated scores. So, like for example, the 8 gig drive in Crystal Disk Mark in the the high Q depth sequential transfer test, 3.25 gigs a second writes, 3.3 gigs a second reads. So insane transfer speeds if you're moving massive amounts of data. Now the 2 terabyte drive is not quite as fast. It's about the same for reads and about half as fast for writes, but still super fast. And this 8 terabyte drive is kind of the monster. It's just got so many channels to work with. It's just super fast.
Nice. Now, did you talk price on these yet?
I did. Now, if I want to make it sound good, the price is actually really competitive in terms of cost per gigabyte. It used to be enterprise SSDs were $2-3 a gigabyte, right? Because they're higher endurance, they had these longer warranties, they're mission critical, so they go through more qualification, they're just pricier. These are only about 59 cents to 67 cents per gigabyte, but because they're such high capacity, the 8 terabyte drive is $5,500. And the 2 terabyte drive is $1,200. So super expensive for like the typical consumer. But if you're running a rack of servers and you need massive amounts of super fast storage, you can now pack much more NAND into a much smaller space with these 8 terabyte drives. And these large kind of cloud applications and enterprise situations, they're using all the data that they can. So having that kind of density is a big deal. These drives are really nice for the money.
Yeah. You can see those for sure in an all SSD storage array, for the data center. What might be an interesting application for those as well is a high-end workstation, a 2 terabyte drive that can do 3 gigs a second flat out read to write. That's pretty freaking awesome. And you would think there's a market in the workstation segment for that as well, for folks doing professional video rendering, for folks doing CAD of any sort, where serious crunching and throughput bandwidth is required. The
one caveat with enterprise drives, whereas a consumer drive, should it start to fail, you kind of start seeing bad bits and you'll get smart errors, and it'll sometimes fail gracefully. The enterprise drives, as soon as there's any hint of failure, they lock down and you lose all your data. So
really?
that's just something to keep in mind. I've many times thought about throwing one of these enterprise drives in one of my workstations, and I'm like, I'd rather kind of know it's going to fail. I don't need everything it offers for my workstation.
So it would I would figure it would lock down and secure your data and, allow you to retrieve it, but not allow you to use it anymore. Can you not pull data off the drive at that point?
I don't think you can as an end user. Maybe Intel could assist with that, but yeah, it's so that you don't get any bad data sort of transferred or backed up anywhere. As soon as they start to go, they kind of lock down.
Oh, I see. But they have, I mean, you're talking about serious endurance. I mean, these days, the average person, average end user, standard end user, and certainly a workstation professional too, in this case, it takes a long time to beat up a drive. And there, in a lot of ways, I think, if I'm not mistaken, beyond just the mechanical advantages of solid state or non-mechanical versus a spinning hard drive, they're more reliable than spinning hard drives, right?
Yeah, everybody is conservative with their endurance ratings. So these are rated for one full entire drive write per day for 5 years. I wouldn't be surprised if they went further than that. That's just what Intel kind of guarantees.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, the Intel Optane SSD 800P, the Intel SSD DC P4510 NVMe, excuse me, that was so much I almost choked. Enthusiast class drive on one hand and enterprise class drive on the other hand. There, check them out. We get the reviews up at HotHardware, and Marco has been thrashing the bits lately, seriously, on solid state storage. Always fun to play with solid state drives, isn't it? It's one of our favorite technologies around here.
Yeah, it's one of the hot things still. I like messing with these things.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of the things that one of the aspects of system performance that can affect responsiveness, throughput in general the most, beyond processing and memory and all that good stuff, is your storage subsystem. Let's move along to something, and we can both banter around this, Mark. We're gonna have to banter around, you and I, all of this stuff actually, with just the two of us. The Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. I did a review of that. Here it is now, and it's actually well, it's not glaring out the camera too bad, but not the easiest thing to focus on, I'm sure. Lots of gloss here, as you can see, but this is the Galaxy S9 Plus. It is a 6.2-inch Super AMOLED display. That's Samsung's device is rocking here, and so it's a larger format smartphone. It's based on an Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 processor, 6 gig of RAM, and 64 gigs of onboard storage. Dual cameras in the back. An dual aperture camera, so an f1.5 aperture and an f2.4 aperture camera on the rear side of the device, and both with optical image stabilization and multi-shot noise reduction, multi-frame noise reduction, and just an impressive device. We sort of get a little bit critical here with smartphone manufacturers, and how they iterate with these devices, and how they, what's the next generation really going to look like? Is it going to be that much more of an upgrade, of an advancement versus the previous gen? I think the Galaxy S9 took a bad rap here by some folks because it does fairly closely resemble the Galaxy S8. I mean, the design is, darn near identical. It is actually a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner top and bottom bezels. So you got a little bit shorter device, but about the same thickness. It still has that high polish feel. And as you can see here, it's compared. Thanks, John. That's a great shot. On the left here, you see the Galaxy S8 Plus. On the right, you've got the Galaxy S9 Plus. And so, a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, but more refined. There's a lot of features in this phone. I think it was a worthwhile upgrade. If you're on a Galaxy S8 Plus and you're not the type of user that needs to have that new smartphone every time the next generation comes out, maybe you're a new every two type of person, so to speak, every 2 years. Maybe then you can certainly say, it's up to you if the technology, your smartphone technology, is that important to justify that upgrade. But I can tell you that the performance from this machine, from what we saw in the benchmarks, fastest right now Android smartphone in the market currently. It is also one of the few shipping with Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 processor on board. There will be others coming, so that gap will close with other Android phones. And more importantly, we did another expose on it, or I should say a feature on the device this week. We did a quick little comparo in the image quality from the camera, comparing the image quality of the Galaxy S9 versus the Google Pixel 2 XL, which is arguably, regarded as one of the best smartphone cameras in the market, the Google Pixel 2 XL. Galaxy S9 Plus gave it a run for its money, and in my opinion, in a lot of cases, provided better image quality, and in some cases, it trailed the Pixel 2 XL as well. That dual aperture helps a lot in extreme lighting conditions where you have high bright settings or low light settings where it struggles. And actually, that's a good shot right there, John, if you can leave it where it is. The shot on the left is the Galaxy S9 Plus. The shot on the right is the Pixel 2 XL. Where it can struggle is when you have mixed light settings for your shot. Here you've got a very high bright window next to the statue and the figurine and the clock inside the house. And as you can see, the windows affecting the brightness level of the entire shot as a result of that, because the camera has kicked into that f2.4 aperture, tighter aperture camera. So to limit the light from the window and to get the exposure correct on the window. So, but what you don't see in that shot, and what obviously the webcast view isn't going to do justice for, is that there's a lot less noise in that shot versus on the Pixel 2 XL. And in general, that was the main benefit I saw, was that Samsung's multi-frame, multi-shot noise reduction actually takes 12 shots in a single snap, in 3 groups of 4 and combines them to make one top shot, the best shot, and present that one shot to the user. It combines them in an effort to provide noise reduction techniques. So it's actually pretty impressive in terms of noise reduction. And there you can see that's pretty clear, even though it's a fairly low light setting there with that contrast off the window. But there's plenty of other shots. Check it out at HotHardware. We've got some great comparisons there between that and the Galaxy S9 Plus and the Google Pixel 2 XL. Just impressive stuff. One of the best smartphone cameras in the market, in my opinion. A close second, maybe the Pixel 2 XL, or depending on your preference, image quality is certainly subjective. The Pixel 2 SL, in your opinion, in certain situations may be better, but real close, in my opinion, a little bit better. I like what Samsung does with the image processing side of things. Marco, what do you think about the Galaxy S9 Plus? What do you think about those pictures too? Because image quality and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on the crux of the issue right at the end there. I think Samsung tunes their post processing algorithms. Now, we should mention this is in auto. Like, you can obviously tune manually if you want to get the shots exactly to your liking. So,
good point.
With the auto settings, where most people are going to just pick up their phone and snap a shot, Samsung's default post processing, I think they make it bright and saturated to sort of wow people. That may not be too critical of the super fine details in the shot. So if you like that sort of vibrance to come right out of the phone, which is obviously great for social media, it's really great for food shots, then you're probably going to like the S9. The S9 Plus's images better than the Pixel 2 XL. In the comparisons, the S9 clearly had less noise in basically all of the shots. The whole team sort of looked at these photos and we all bantered about with our opinions. The S9 clearly had less noise, sometimes more sharpness, but in some shots, the post-processing was evident. There was one shot of the snow where you see all the snow on the branches, and it's just way brighter and whiter on the S9. But if you look at the really fine branches off in the distance, not only are some of them not visible, they sort of look outlined because there's the sharpening algorithm kind of done to them. But like Dave says, ultimately, which image you like better, it's in the eye of the beholder, and they both take really nice shots.
Yeah, you really can't go wrong with either of those two devices. I mean, the Google Pixel 2 XL is a great phone and certainly a great camera array. My opinion with the Galaxy S9 Plus was that I liked the processing, the post processing better with the series, and I've generally tended to like Samsung's shot output better than most. What I find with the Google Pixel 2 XL is that the shots it takes are very accurate, but on occasion when lighting isn't quite the best, you get sort of a washed out sort of effect, a little bit washed out. So if anything, I think Google tries to, capture accuracy versus quality. I mean, they're trying to do it all, obviously, but they lean towards accuracy more so, I would say, in the way they process shots. Samsung is looking to produce a shot that pops, I guess, as a way to phrase it. And I don't mind that so much. Some folks find the Samsung output on the Galaxy S9 Plus and even previous generation Galaxy S8 is a little bit oversaturated. They find it, just a little bit almost cartoony because it's oversaturated. The colors are really vibrant. I like that look. We have a couple pictures of Yogi, a Jack Russell, on a staircase, and you can see if you compare between the two, Yogi really pops, and the staircase has some intricate, sort of patterns in the carpet that's on the staircase, and it really picks that up. Whereas in the Pixel 2 XL, you don't see some of those contrasts, you don't see some of those details as well. And so it's certainly a preference kind of thing. But man, I mean, it's a great camera. The other thing I think that folks really sort of overlooked, or maybe not overlooked, but maybe it didn't get enough airtime, I thought was really cool, was the super slow-mo mode in the Galaxy S9 Plus. You can fire a video clip, and it will basically, in auto mode, it'll kick into super slow-mo mode when something crosses the frame. You'll have this reticle that comes up on the screen, and you'll be shooting an area, and there's movement in the field of view, As soon as it trips that reticle, it kicks off a 0.2 second burst of recording that it then slows down to 6 seconds in time, and extends over 6 seconds of time. And the effect is just cool, man. I mean, you see, I took some shots of my dogs running around, and you see them sprinting, and then all of a sudden, bang, they go into super slow mode, and you see their legs and all just, going the way, to watch an animal run in slow motion it's cool. It's it's an interesting, four-legged beast, but yeah, just impressive stuff and a lot of fun. I think folks, you can see lots of uses beyond just animals. I mean, taking it to the soccer field or the baseball field where your kids are playing and catching some great slow-mo action there. Maybe you're on the dance floor cutting it up, and you and your crew is, all of a sudden some slow-mo highlights from the night before that you might regret. All good stuff. You saw the super slow-mo mode, right, Margo?
Oh yeah, man, it is really cool, and it works very well the way Samsung implemented it.
Yeah, it's not just gimmick, and so what it does is it stitches those modes together. So you have this, real time, then bang, you go to slow mo, and then back to real time again. And so you see this effect. It's actually really cool, and I'm surprised it hasn't been done before, because we've got the horsepower in these phones and with these cameras these days to do it. It's pretty cool, and there's lots of other sort of interesting features that Samsung brought into the mix. You've got a fingerprint sensor in here. You've got face recognition. You've got iris scan. So you've got all the security features you want. Samsung's of the belief that retinal scan, is retinal scan. I said iris. Maybe it's iris. Is it iris or is it retinal? I don't know. Anyways, it's scanning your eyes. They're of the opinion that iris scan is more secure, and so versus facial scan, which can be fooled, and we all know that that's been done before with phones, fooling them with pictures and whatnot. But pretty cool phone for sure. I like it a lot. It's pricey. I mean, these days, kind of the going rate for a flagship, fully decked out Android phone these days, about $800. This goes for $839 unlocked. 64 gigs of storage, 6 gig of RAM though, so it's a healthy setup. I don't know, Marco, what's the device you're rocking these days, and would you step up to the Galaxy S9?
I'm still rocking a Asus Zenfone 3. So I have a Zenfone 3 Deluxe. I used to be one of those guys that upgraded every generation. I have ceased to be one of those guys, but I do love the S9. I totally would rock that phone. I think at this moment in time, I mean, it's arguably the best camera. It has fantastic industrial design. It is easily the fastest phone because it's the only one with Snapdragon 845 that's available. It just has so many advantages. It got the dust and water resistance. Samsung sort of hits all of the fine points. It's even expandable. You have a dual SIM tray slot with micro SD expansion. It sort of does everything really well. And yeah, if you're looking for a new smartphone, like I would totally rock an S9 if I was itching to get a new phone, no question about it.
Yeah, we get to play with lots of new toys here, so it's cool to try them out. And we would say that this is one device, the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus and the S9. The S9 standard does not have that dual rear camera. It has dual aperture, okay, just like the Galaxy S9 Plus. The dual cameras on the S9 Plus, there's also a wide angle telephoto lens as well. You don't get that on the S9 standard, and that's one of the few differences there. I think the S9 standard also is 4 gig of RAM. But yeah, some good options from Samsung. I think they've upped the game nicely, and looking forward to see who answers. What Google's got up their sleeve next, and all the other guys to compete with this, because it's. In my opinion, we gave it an editor's choice. It's one of the best Android phones in the market right now. So, hey, let's move along to some controversial stuff, but let's answer very quickly, Marco. Let's discuss quickly because it was brought up in the comments. Jonas wants to know what we think about NVIDIA GPP, the GeForce Partner Program. We did have a little article about that up. And John, we don't have a link for that for you, but we'll discuss it real quick. It's it's something that is being dug into by various members of the press, including Kyle at HardOCP. who actually brought it to the forefront, broke the story. We followed up with our own views on it as well. Basically, it's a program that NVIDIA is pulled together for its partners to help promote the brand and to ensure gamer messaging is consistent in terms of the brand and what people are getting and the products they buy that contain GeForce. In that program are various features that or benefits, I should say, that NVIDIA gives to the OEMs in terms of marketing support, marketing dollars, priority perhaps over binned GPUs or specialty GPUs that have certain characteristics. And so, there's benefits of being part of the program. The program, they've said, is optional, and you have to be a member as an OEM providing NVIDIA solutions. But the word on the street is, if you're not a member, you're going to get basically, you're not going to get all those benefits. And, oh, by the way, to be a part of the program, the allegation is you're not allowed to market other GPU and graphic solutions. You're not allowed to in your product lines, which obviously limits choice for consumers, if that's true, and then boxes out AMD, which is anti-competitive in nature. We'll treat this with kid gloves because we don't know enough about it, because it's still being investigated. We reported on it. We asked NVIDIA for comment. We didn't get any comment back. It was rumor. It was regarded as rumor by the folks at NVIDIA. Marco, what are your thoughts on it? And we'll just finish it up briefly and say we at least addressed it from the comments.
So based on everything NVIDIA has said publicly, and they have a blog post that sort of outlines what the GPP entails, based on everything they said publicly, is really, it's just, another marketing program. It's another way to work more closely with partners and to sort of give additional benefits to partners who work more closely with NVIDIA. Now, the scuttlebutt, and it's not just scuttlebutt that we've read elsewhere. We have had some contact with right. OEMs that wish to remain nameless at this time, say that the documentation has those connotations where if they don't exclusively offer GeForce, they may miss out on some key benefits that are very important for their brands. Now, technically, I think these companies could just have different brands. Like, I'm not going to use an example. Let's say you had Ultra Gamer laptop brand. You could have Ultra Gamer N and Ultra Gamer A, and you're fine. But I think people don't want to sort of invest in that. If I'm understanding it all correctly, I may not be understanding it all correctly. But since this is all still playing out, like Dave says, we kind of shouldn't say anything too nutty here. If the allegations are true against NVIDIA, it looks kind of shady, and it probably won't be something. It probably will cause some problems for them. We'll leave it at that, without going too crazy.
Yeah, we don't claim to be the experts on this situation at all. We did have some contact, as Marco mentioned, and it's just one of those things where until you have proof of the documentation that says these things, that says has these terms that are quote unquote anti-competitive in them, then you really can't say. Kyle's digging into that over at HotHardware. We applaud him for his efforts there. I think it seems, like his intent is in the right place. He does not want to have gamers' choice and brand limited. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we all can agree with that. And so, yeah, we're sort of taking a step back from this one, sort of letting the information pour out before we cast judgment. It doesn't smell right. I will tell you that. But the folks at NVIDIA posted a blog on it that says what it's supposed to be, and it says is not intended to be exclusive. What are you going to do? It's a he said, she said sort of thing by the seashore. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're just going to have to watch this unfold a little bit, and we'll certainly we will certainly report on it as more details evolve, and if we get additional details from others in the industry. All right, wow, that was deep. We didn't even have that one on the radar. That's okay. Let's talk about something else that was kind of deep, a little bit on the funky side here. AMD processors and chipsets reportedly riddled with new security flaws, and specifically flaws named Rise and Fall, Chimera, and Fallout. All these, it cracks me up. We had Spectre and Meltdown for Intel and other processors as well. Very serious sounding flaws, right? And now we've got Rise and Fall, and Fallout and Chimera, which it sounds like, nuclear references there. Kind of crazy. But what's interesting is, there was a security, quote unquote, security analyst or research firm that did an expose on this and determined that there were multiple, like 13 in total, chip flaws that could be exploited, and that there's the grid right there, that put specifically AMD Zen architecture at risk. So anything Ryzen or EPYC in the data center for server chips. Now, we're taking this with a grain of salt. We reported on it, and we reported on it with some balance in that regard as well. Marco, what are your thoughts about this? There's also I used the word fishy in our webcast headline today because something don't smell right there either, right?
Some parts of this don't smell right, but I've actually been doing a lot of reading on it today. And okay, so it turns out the flaws are there, right? It's basically, it's confirmed that the flaws exist. All right. So apparently this CTS Labs sent the exploits with proof of concept code to Dan Guido of Trail of Bits. The CEO of Trail of Bits is another security researcher, and he confirms, I'm going to read his tweet right now, actually. It says, regardless of the hype around the release, the bugs are real, accurately described in their technical report, which is not public, and their exploit code works. That sounds bad, but it's not as bad as the report makes it sound. So first thing to keep in mind is that you need admin privileges, and basically, for some of this, you need physical access. So your machine's already compromised if you're going to leverage these exploits. If somebody has admin access to your server or machine, they already have everything. So this isn't quite the same as some other exploits that can be remotely executed if you don't have admin privilege. You need admin privileges, so that the flaws are there, but that sort of kicks down the scariness quite a bit. Now, on top of that, apparently, according to this gentleman, Dan Guido, now they're not foundational issues like fundamental problems in the processor. They're understood programming flaws, and he says they have been known since the 90s. So, what it really seems like now, if you continue to do lots of the reading around this, it appears that this there's another company, I forget the full name, it's Viceroy something, Viceroy Research, put out a report which makes it, they're basically, what it boils down to is it looks like they want to short AMD stock, and they have a financial interest in the company, and they either own or have a huge stake in CTS Labs, which is a fledgling company that's only a few months old. Their domain was just registered last year, and they're trying to short AMD stock and really make the sound of these exploits sound much worse because they have financial interest. That's the gist. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's too conspiratorial to be true, but that's what it smells like at this point in time.
It does. I will say, when you look at the background of these individuals and the companies that put this report together, yeah, it's a little fishy. There's almost zero track record there. Domains being registered, very recently. What's the name of the site? It's like AMD Flaws or something like that.
AMD Flaws, and they also, typically like Google would give a company like AMD 90 days before before disclosing the exploits publicly. These guys gave AMD 24 hours. Now they're under no legal obligation to give any notice. Right. Technically, they don't have to do 90 days. It's just sort of like a professional courtesy. But the way this all played out with the website already done, all these graphics and videos, and not giving AMD notice and just sort of dumping it online, and then basically disclosing they have a financial interest, it doesn't look right. There's something not right about the whole situation.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems a little on the odd side for sure. And the whole notion about it being some sort of stock short or whatever, I don't know. It's that's like in and of itself just the SEC would be all over that. Like, it would just be it would be a really not a wise move to sorry, I was changing around backgrounds here on the desktop and screwing up my lighting. It would not be a wise move for them to be coming out with this and then playing some games with the stock. That's kind of illegal.
Yeah, exactly.
Last I checked. So we'll have to see how this unfolds as well. And we've got contacting with AMD on this directly. I'm told, I had a discussion with some representatives at AMD today actually on this, that there is a statement forthcoming. So we will know for sure what their position is on this. I think folks are sort of peeling back the onion and digging in on this fiasco as well, to see, just somehow determine if there's any sort of real validity to it, and if it's credible. It sounds like, based on what you talked about, Marco, I would think the average end user doesn't have to be concerned regardless, because you're talking about needing system access and BIOS, firmware, modification, where things get sticky, and where most of the Spectre and Meltdown concern is in the cloud, when you have virtual machines, somebody having administrator, hypervisor administrator rights that could affect an entire box versus their own virtual machine, right? Is that kind of the primary concern if these are real?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see. And the folks at AMD are going to be getting back to us with some updates on that, and we will keep you posted. Interesting stuff, a little on the fishy side. Let's move on to something that's interesting, that's very interesting and tiny, and that is the MINIX Neo N42C for mini PC. N42C for mini PC. Why are they doing this to me, Marco? They're killing me with these names. What do you know about the Neo?
I'll burn through this. It's really cool. Let me hold it up and frame myself here. So this is it. This is that little guy right here. So you see, basically a palm-sized little PC. Inside here is an Intel Apollo Lake quad-core Intel Pentium processor. Includes 4 gigs of RAM, but there is another open DIMM slot if you want to add more. It has 32 gigabytes of eMMC storage. Now, it's going to sound low, but that's to keep the Windows licensing costs down. There is also an M.2 slot inside here. It's for SATA SSDs, but you can expand the storage with more solid state storage. But the kicker with this model is that MINIX included Windows 10 Pro. Lots of these inexpensive, small form factor, sort of all-in-one PCs include Windows 10 Home. But if you're using it in an enterprise environment or industrial applications where you want it to join a domain, Home doesn't do much use. So Pro is sought after in those areas. And for under $300, you get a full PC with the Windows 10 Pro license. Now, performance isn't killer with a low power platform like this. It's basically a quad core Intel Atom processor in there, but perfectly usable, great for home theater applications, great for digital signage, perfectly adequate for honestly just day-to-day poking around on the desktop. And super low power. I think total. Let me just jump into here for 1 second. I think max power when I was like beating on it with something like 12 watts or 15 watts when it was doing Steam in-home streaming of a game. 15 watts, the whole system, nothing. Now it is actively cooled. Some of these are passively cooled. There is a fan in here, but it remains super quiet. Just a cool little PC. And because they're so tiny and so cheap, they can be used for so many different applications. I actually use something similar for, I helped a friend set up a DVR at, for his home with, for security reasons. Doesn't have a PC that he could leave on or an easy way to remote in. So I'm like, well, go buy one of these. We'll throw TeamViewer on it. And now he just, leaves this little tiny box in a closet and he can remote in and access his DVR from anywhere. It's pretty cool.
Huh. That's an interesting application. So home security, he's got cameras hooked up to it, and he's monitoring through that box, just remoting in.
Yeah, like setting up dynamic DNS is sort of beyond him. It's a little too complicated. Some of the DVRs you can just log right into the DVR itself if you know how to set all that stuff up. But he just wanted something super easy. So yeah, I just said, you know what? A couple $100, put this little tiny PC on a shelf somewhere, you'll be fine. And it's worked out perfect.
Home theater PC streamer, that might be a good application for it, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Throw Kodi on here. And yeah, you have an awesome little full PC that can stream basically anything. The advantage to a Windows PC with Kodi, in my opinion, is it's super easy to get codecs for any format. It's also easy to access whatever other resources are on your network. So yeah, I like these mini PCs. And if you look at, and I'm not going to talk about numbers, but the traffic on these articles are actually pretty good, even though it may not be a very well-known brand. So I think there's interest in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of applications for it. Anytime you talking about getting a certain level of horsepower into a footprint that's palm sized like that, that's impressive stuff. And with all the the integration of the IO outputs and whatnot these days, you can really do a lot. You can do a lot with these boxes that you couldn't do in the past, where you needed a lot more real estate to do it. So yeah, it's impressive stuff. From car PCs to home theater PCs to home security, as you mentioned, Marco. Lots of applications for it. The MINIX Neo N42C, and what's it powered by again? Is that a Pentium something or other?
Intel Apollo Lake based Pentium N4200. So quad core, Apollo Lake, Atom class processor, 64-bit. I think the max turbo clock was 2.5. Let me see if I have it written down here. I don't have it written down, but I think the max turbo is like 2.5 gigahertz. Low power processor, not a speed demon by any means, but adequate for the use cases it's designed for.
4K video streaming capable on the graphics block in that thing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I did test the 4K streaming wired and wireless. It can display 4K. Obviously, it's got DisplayPort and HDMI outputs. Yeah, it works good. Nice.
Cool stuff from the folks at MINIX. All right, let's move on and we'll start wrapping things up. But a couple of interesting headlines. Let's talk about the folks at Qualcomm, who we're pretty close with, between all the technology that they bring out to smartphones and various mobile markets in general, from RF radio technology to the processors themselves, the Snapdragon mobile platform, as they call it. Broadcom is another player in the industry, and they had been approaching Qualcomm in what is essentially a hostile takeover effort, trying to acquire the company and essentially merge the two, but have their board take over. And it was a lot of back and forth and what seemed like high drama for a while, right, Marco? Interesting stuff. John, I don't know if you can put that one up, but also probably, I don't know if I've ever heard of this happening, but it seems like at first President Donald J. Trump nixed the whole deal by issuing an executive order that, as we said, he went nuclear and killed the Broadcom hostile takeover of Qualcomm. And talk about just amazing times we live in. We saw earlier this year Intel and AMD get together for a hybrid chip. Now we've got hostile takeovers, trying to go through and a president stepping in to shut that down. I mean, just talk about wild stuff, right? What are your thoughts on that thing, Marco?
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty nuts. Qualcomm, I mean, assuming Trump, the whole administration was on the up and up with their reasoning, Qualcomm's got their hands in a lot of pies. They're making some cool chips. If there's national security implications, then I could totally see why they're like, nope, you're not getting your hands on Qualcomm. So they basically, the administration disqualified many of the Broadcom members from being on the Qualcomm board, which basically nixes the deal. And yeah, it's not going to happen at this point. At least not on the current path they were on. Like the current path they were trying to follow is just not going to work out.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, Broadcom. I'm trying to think what the national Chinese company. I'm trying to think where in Asia they are based. Forgive me, but there was national security concern from the Trump administration on this due to the fact that there was, that's where they were based, and it would allow this foreign entity to have too much control over communications infrastructure, and you could see the sort of connections drawn there. But just wild stuff to have the president come in and actually nix that deal. Philosophically for me, we'd reported on them many times in the past, and this whole situation we've reported many times in the past at HotHardware. I didn't think it made a lot of sense to begin with. Not that I had an opinion here or there if a president was going to step in and nix the deal, but it didn't seem to me when you look at Broadcom versus Qualcomm. Qualcomm has a wall of patents in their lobby. They are an innovator and an inventor, and Broadcom is an implementer. They have lots of device level technology, lots of system level technology, but in terms of intellectual property and patent, Qualcomm is clearly a stronger company in that regard. And it felt to me like it'd be the tail wagging the dog. You'd have the ownership of Broadcom, where Qualcomm is really their special sauce, right? I mean, that those patents and the intellectual property and the inventions that they bring forth are what makes them such a dominant force in mobile technology. It's why Apple is, trying to, do more themselves, build more themselves, because they've been so entrenched with Broadcom that they're too dependent, and Apple doesn't like that. They want to be as independent as possible. So it's a fascinating dynamic, and certainly it was fun to watch, but now it's over. Exactly. Who would have thunk that? Yeah, crazy stuff. And before we go, we have two things that are very important. We'll talk about the giveaway. That's very important, but we want to say farewell and thank you for all of the amazing contributions in science and cosmology and physics. Stephen Hawking has passed away at the age of 76, an amazingly bright mind. He will be sorely missed, but an amazing contribution to technology and the world we live in, and how we exist in it. Right, Marco? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's obviously one of the brightest minds ever. I've read, The Brief History of Time was an awesome book. I really enjoyed that book. My brain was scrambled reading it, but I got through it. I loved lots of the theories that he's put forth. Later on, I think he was kind of saying some stuff, like about AI, just to keep his name in the headlines. But no denying his genius. It's definitely a big. The world is now dumber without him in it.
Yeah, I know. He's just an amazing man. And when you think about the people in history, Einstein, any of these types of folks, just sort of one of those gems of humanity that we all, what's the statistic? We use like 10% of our brain. The average person uses like 10% of your brain in reality. These guys probably use more like 50. You know,
I think that 10% number has been debunked, but yeah, they're definitely using more of that gray matter than everybody else.
yeah, absolutely. No, just a fascinating guy, and it's sorry to see him go. And yeah, no, just and he passed away on what was uh, uh, coincidence? He passed away. Albert Einstein. It was his birth or something, right? Trying
I'm
to
not
think.
sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that there was a coincidence there. Maybe somebody in the chat can help us with that one. But yeah, there was a coincidence there with another great mind in the world. All right, well, before we get too deep, let's talk about something fun. Let's talk about a giveaway. We are going to be teaming up with the folks at AMD and Corsair, and Marco is going to build some treasures, right?
Yay! I don't know exactly what's coming yet, but we have confirmation from AMD and Corsair. We're going to give away a AMD Raven Ridge based PC. Inside some very awesome Corsair parts, case, PSU, and other goodies. Soon as I know what motherboard I have, I'll know what case we're going to use, and we can get all of the details hashed out. But some of the parts have shipped, confirmation from both companies. As soon as we have all of the fine details hammered out, contest post will go up. We'll make it super easy to win. We'll do a nice build video and show off the rig, and you all have a chance to win it.
Yeah, baby. Yeah,
baby. Exactly.
So Raven Ridge, some Corsair goodness on the chassis, and even some peripherals thrown in. We're still hashing out the specs, but that is going to be a little bit of fun. Yeah, man.
Yes.
We'll be giving it all away. Yeah, we will be announcing it soon. We usually run it for a month or a little bit less. Just to get some folks to engage and join us in the site. And actually, I'm gonna take a step back. I'm not going crazy. Stephen Hawking did pass away in coincidence with Albert Einstein's birthday. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, just yeah, crazy stuff. The coincidence there with very bright minds, but yeah, you can win that system, the giveaway, which we will be thinking of some sort of crafty name for very soon. Stay tuned for that. Come by to Hot Hardware at hothardware.com, twitter.com/hothardware, where you can tweet with us, youtube.com/hothardwarevids or Hot Hardware, where hopefully you're watching us right now. Hit a thumbs up and subscribe to us here for more tech product review goodness, event coverage, and this 2.5 Geeks webcast. Facebook.com, we're there too, Hot Hardware, all over the web. And we would love to have you join us. We will be trying to be here consistently every Wednesday evening at 5:30 Eastern. That is our slot, by hook or by crook. Marco, any parting words?
No, man, I'm looking forward to a nice meal out with the guys tonight. I got a hall pass, so I'm going to get off the podcast, go get cleaned up and pretty, and shoot out for a nice bite to eat with the fellas, and that's about it.
You got a hall pass. Where you going? Any place good?
I'm going to a place in Greenwich, Connecticut called Harvest. I've never been there. I have no idea how good it is.
Nice. Up in Boston, we'd call that Harvest.
Harvest. Gonna drive my car to Harvest and spill some food in my pants.
There you go. Well, have fun at Harvest tonight, and nosh a little bit. Tip one in my general direction as well, will you?
You got it, baby.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Catch us next Wednesday, 5:30. We will be back, the 2.5 Geeks webcast. Thanks for stopping by.